Day 2, Sonic Temple Art and Music Fest here at Historic Crew Stadium. Lewis, I'm so glad we get to tag team.
I know.
Mr. Andy from Black Veil Brides.
Here
it's
I
so
am.
good to see you. You guys tore up the stage earlier
Thank
this
you.
afternoon. How was your set and the reception?
It was amazing. I was talking to somebody before the set, and we've been doing this so long, and we haven't had more than 2 weeks off since August, so we're very well rehearsed at this point. So I wasn't nervous about what we were going to do, but at festivals, there's always some stuff that could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Other people's gear, whatever. And I'm happy to report that we had a mostly tech issue-free show today.
Well,
Nice.
fantastic.
And the crowd was incredible, so it was lovely.
And as a musician, when you're on stage, you hear little things, but nobody else notices. So
Yeah, no.
that's a good sign.
Well, we've been doing this long enough to know that you don't make a big deal about it if something's going wrong, right? Yeah.
So
it's part of the show.
You've just released Bleeders, and there's so much
That's why
to
I'm
talk
covered
about.
in blood right now. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so there's just so much to talk about. Okay, Sweeney inspired. The video is freaking amazing. Talk about revenge. Talk about all of it. Like, just tell me about the song and everything else. Like, there's just so much here. I love this.
Well, so I've loved Sweeney Todd my whole life, right? And it's one of those things you don't know when something enters into your life when you're so young. I've kind of traced it back. So my dad went to CCM in Cincinnati, College Conservatory of Music, and he was really into musical theater. And one of the shows that he loved was Sweeney Todd. So my parents had the double CD set of the original cast recording with Angela Lansbury and Len
nice.
Carew. So there's a thing called Playhouse in the Park in Cincinnati where they do shows, and I think it was probably around like 96, 97, so I was too young to go to the show. But they went to the show, so they must have been listening to the soundtrack in the house, because how else does the 6-year-old stumble across this, right? And I remember hearing it, and then the difference between hearing it and then seeing the visual of I have it tattooed on my arm. This little right here is the cover of the record.
Sweeney Todd,
and
yeah.
I remember seeing it and just thinking like it was the coolest looking thing ever. So it really became part of my life, where there was Kiss, and there was the Misfits, and there was Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
And so it's something I've always loved. And then early on in the process for what we're working on now, I started really looking into the idea of, our whole career I've always been really into what is the idea of revenge. I grew up as somebody who was sort of an underdog, and I always had this chip on my shoulder at all times. Anybody who's seen us in a festival in the previous 10 years knows that I've spent a fair amount of time yelling at people and fighting with people.
That sounds like you and me. What the
Right?
fuck?
I know.
Award show speeches and whatnot. But so it's always been a part of my life. And growing up playing sports, it was also a significant thing of like, you have to push yourself more, and you got to prove yourself. And so I was curious about, I can't think of many times in my life where that's come to fruition in totality, where the revenge comes from doing something great, right? Or living your life the way that you wanted to, or enjoying your life. Like it's revenge that comes from joy, I suppose, as opposed to, this person, I've shown this person. But you still, like all of us who feel that way, you like to think, I'm going to show them, right? And so what is that? So I started writing about what that is, and then I thought, well, there's this thing that's central to my love of music, which is Sweeney Todd, which when they first came out was called the Revenge-sicle, or the musical. And the whole story is about revenge. So how do I combine this thing that I'm writing about with this thing that I love? And that's how you get Bleeders. And then, we made the video with Jensen Owen, who helped us make a version of the movie that I've always wanted to see, and
Yes.
we're off to the races.
It is so dark and
Yeah.
awesome. I freaking love it.
Yeah,
That video, I was like, we got to put it on the big screen TV. I can't watch this on my phone. That's bullshit. So good.
Thank
love
you.
It. Yeah.
I mean, I've always wanted to work with him, and obviously he's done incredible stuff with Falling in Reverse and so many other bands. So, he created something that, for me, it was like I kind of made the joke when we were there filming it, just because of how much I love this character and how much I've always wanted to be this character. It felt a little bit like, and I don't want to sound insensitive, but you've seen those videos of like a high school team where like there's the one kid who never gets to play, and then the last game of the season they all like they let him in, but then they let him like score a touchdown or whatever. It felt like everybody was just sort of letting me do this thing, like let's let him be Sweeney Todd. Come on.
So we're gonna call you Rudy once in a while.
Exactly. Yeah. The only difference is Rudy didn't have to pay for the opportunity, So at the very least, I was financially responsible for the event, but people let me do something pretty awesome.
Did you know that you always wanted to incorporate the theatrics into it? Because I always have. It's such an art to be able to kind of fit the right music with the right theatrics.
Sure.
And then when you go see a live show, like we had you for our Blitz Blackout back in the fall.
Yeah.
And you get the visual now has become, especially in the social media world where everybody's videoing or everybody's taking pictures, the visual thing has become so much bigger than it ever has before.
Yeah.
I mean, you see bands like Ghost that, are part of it. Metallica's always been kind of visual with their stuff. Is that always something when you decided to start down this road, did you always want to find a way to incorporate that into what you guys do?
Yeah, I think a lot of it also comes from, obviously the bands that influenced me, but also I was 16 when the band started touring and people knowing who we are, and I felt like I had to create a version of myself that wasn't somebody that would be sitting in class with you. Do you know what I mean? And when you're that age, you have insecurities about, I was touring. Everybody else in the band was 10, 12 years older than me, so not everybody being that age, but the people who were either in the band or around us working for us, there was a significant age difference between me and everybody else, so I kind of had to create myself into something else, and the makeup and the theatrics and all that stuff lends itself to it because I could become the version of Andy that was on stage that was different than the version of Andy who was a high school dropout that was like trying to fit in with everybody. So I think it served well in that way. As I've gotten older, I've found that it's really central to my interests to what is now referred to as like world building, the comic books and the music videos and the merch and all the stuff that surrounds it. I find that to be so much fun that I think some artists see it as a chore or something that is supplementary to making music. And I think the way that I see everything is always that the music is the most important piece, but everything else needs to be in concert with it for it to work,
Right. And you did all of this and then incorporated your blood drive, Black Veil Bride Saves Lives.
Yeah.
Was that something
a tremendous amount of blood donated, by the way. I'll be honest, I'm happy it happened. I did not expect this amount of blood. It's been crazy.
Yeah, I've been following that, and it's like pint after pint, like thousands and cajillions of that. And I think they're going to need a storage facility for it because you guys did a great job on that. Was that something you kind of always wanted to do, or was that something that inspired you because you read about kind of what was happening right now? And God, we need to really help this out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always been an altruistic tendency within the band, and we've always tried to work with various charities. Every tour I always try to do something with some charity. Predominantly for me, it's animal charities because that's something that's really close to me. But I wanna, as much as this is a really cool thing, I can't take all the credit for the idea. So our manager Blasco, who's many people know was in Ozzy Osbourne for years and years, Rob Zombie, Danzig, a bunch of other bands. He's a native Angelino, grew up going to shows in Los Angeles, and he saw Wasp in like 1985 play at the Whiskey, and they did a blood drive for free tickets to the show.
Oh, wow.
So that stuck in his head for 40 years, and he brought it up when I was talking about what can we do surrounding this tour? What's something that we can do? And so he goes, well, what if we did this? And then it became, well, let's do it on a larger scale and make it something where anybody anywhere can be involved in this. But if you happen to be somewhere near a show and you come to the show, there's going to be a merch incentive and all this other stuff that's involved with it. And we pitched it to the American Red Cross, not knowing whether they would be interested in partnering. And they've been fantastic and really responsive. And you've seen, it's been unbelievable what the fans have done.
That's awesome.
I have to say, if you donate blood, take the juicy juice because you'll pass out if you do not.
Yes.
I'm just telling you from personal experience.
Yeah, you got to do the juice. You got it with the cookie, whatever they're giving you.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of blood and theatrics and comic books, how many times did you rewatch the hallway fight in the Daredevil Netflix series?
Oh.
You know what's so funny is, so the new series that's coming out.
I can't wait.
So my friend Ryan Downey, who is a writer who many people know, he's one of my best friends, and I would say like 90% of our text exchange these days is just like blurry set photos of the Daredevil, like upcoming Born Again Daredevil thing.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very excited for that. I love the Netflix series. I'm so excited that the MCU has rightly decided to take all of those shows in. I saw, the actress who plays Jessica Jones has purple hair now.
Yeah, Kristen Ritter.
Ritter, yeah. She's got the purple hair a la the comics, so I'm very hyped for all of that.
I watched
Punisher.
Oh, Punisher.
I watched that Netflix show because I didn't think they could do it as good as they ever did. So when the MCU redid it, I'm like, how are you going to redo that any better? But I remember watching that hallway fight for the first time, and I'm like, this is the most incredible fight scene I've ever seen.
The whole show is unbelievable, man. It's really like a hidden gem where people don't realize how good it is. Because it was an MCU, now it is, but I think people will hopefully go back and see it.
When you watch him, you go, he gets the shit beat out of him the entire time.
Yes, yeah. It's unbelievable, but it's also like. That's another thing that I love about superheroes in general is characters to show the pathos of like the pushing yourself. There's that famous panel, the Come On Superman or Come On Spider-Man panel where he's trapped underneath and he pushes. And they use that in Homecoming. I love that kind of stuff because again, I always sort of resonate with the underdog idea.
You are a huge graphic novel comic guy, and talk to me about being Ohioans. Talk about the Ghost of Ohio.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I've always Cincinnati's really interesting. Something that people don't realize is the sort of Germanic architecture and all the things that exist in downtown Cincinnati. Was actually an influence on the original Gotham City. I don't know how or why, but at some point Bob Kane decided, when Bob Kane and Bill Finger, who created Batman, they listed 100 million years ago, not literally, but that Cincinnati and the Art Deco architecture and the Germanic architecture was an influence on Cincinnati. And what you realize is a lot of the things that exist in Cincinnati were sort of precursors to a lot of New York. The Brooklyn Bridge was first built, a version of it in Cincinnati. There's a smaller Brooklyn Bridge, and a lot of similar things. So growing up where I did, I always saw this really interesting architecture and these very sort of gothy, weird things. And then there's so much odd history in Cincinnati. Like I went to day camp at a place called Dunham, which was formerly a tuberculosis or consumption hospital for 100 years, and then the baseball fields that I played on as a kid were Potter's graves. There's all these really weird, twisted things. So places that I spent a lot of my childhood are on like top most haunted places in the world.
Creepy.
So I started doing research into this, and then I thought, well, what if I told a ghost story that's set in the west side of Cincinnati where I grew up, using all of these things sort of as the backdrop. And that's kind of how that all came together.
Dude, when I was at UC, we had an apartment in like right on the border of over the Rhine.
Yeah.
And everybody swears it was haunted, and we used to hear and see things, and my dogs would go crazy. Turns out, during the Great Depression, it was the clinic or like a hospital where people had went to, and they remodeled it into like apartment type places. Yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, people died in there during the 30s. That was like the medical hospital. And your bedroom was actually one of the operating rooms.
It's crazy. There's so much of that. The place that I went to summer day camp, little kids, underneath where we would play, there are tunnels everywhere that were leading from what the hospital was, which is where like the main building was, where they would take people who had died of consumption in wheelbarrows and take them through and dump them underneath the fields that we were playing in. So every day when I was a little kid, I was playing above the remains of however many hundreds of people had died through the course of 200 years of that being a hospital.
Is that still there? Those
it's still
fields
there,
and
yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
Oh my God.
And people, it's been on like those reality
Ghost Hunters
and all that, yeah. And of course, as a little kid, no one told us this. I had no idea. I just knew it was weird. Like, it was the kind of place, those places where you get that vibe,
right,
where you're like, something's weird here. At like 5 years old, I go, something's weird here. Apparently, a lot.
And on the lighter note, the 1970 Super Friends, the Justice League, or the Hall of Justice was Union Terminal.
And they're apparently filming Superman Legacy, the James Gunn movie. They're filming in Cincinnati coming up. So, assuming they're going to use that.
I hope so.
Yes. Okay, so here's a question off of all of that. Because now I'm starting to freak out, like the creepy shit, because I'm thinking about everything I've ever witnessed or been a part of and thinking where there might be ghosts and stuff. Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit.
That's a pretty large-scale thought if you're thinking of everything you've ever witnessed or been a part of.
Yes, and my head's about to explode.
Okay,
so I have to bring it down. I have this whole thing going on. So if you could go back and be a part of a recording session of any album ever and be a part of that, which one would it be? And if you can only pick one and it's hard, make it two.
That is hard. I'm just thinking about my favorite records, and like sort of what they mean to me. I guess I would be interested to see Springsteen during the Born to Run era, that youthful and that sort of where he's writing with a lot more reckless abandon because he doesn't have everything that he later has in life. One of the things I love about Springsteen is later on he's very analytical of himself, and there's a line in a song called Better Days where he talks about later in his career he's joking about himself being a rich man in a poor man's shirt, right? He's writing all these working class songs as a guy who has everything in the whole world. So I'd be interested to go back where he is scrapping and fighting and trying to figure out his way. I think it would be interesting to see that when they're writing Jungle Land and Born to Run and these other songs.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Now, who's someone that if you could collaborate with, we'll go alive or dead, if you had the chance to collaborate with, who do you think your vibe would best fit in that you think you could make a really cool record with? I've
always been, and this is kind of a deep cut, but a Cincinnati band, a band called Foxy Shazam. I've always loved them. We played, growing up in Cincinnati. We were, 8-10 years younger than them, but we would play. We opened for them a number of times in like the Mad Hatter and Madison Theater in Cincinnati. And I've just always been such a massive fan. So, and I've... over there, Jerry Only just walked in. I was lucky enough that I've gotten to sing with Jerry a number of times. Sang Dig Up Her Bones at the AP Awards a number of years ago. Jerry came and sang with us on stage at a place called Expo 5 in Louisville, but I have 100 Misfits tattoos. I love the Misfits, so that would be another one.
So are you excited to see them tonight?
Absolutely, always.
Okay.
I mean, it's the original.
Right?
Oh, no.
Of course. But Jerry's been so kind to us. It's so funny. He knows how big of a fan I am, and for years he would send me just boxes and boxes of Misfits merchandise. So when we moved, my wife Lilith and I moved out of LA. We live in Florida now. When we moved, there was a whole part of our garage that was just excess, like stuff that we didn't have display room for, of like skateboards and action figures and all that stuff. And the moving guy goes, "You really like the Misfits?" Well, yeah, quite a bit.
Matter of fact, I do.
What was your first clue?
Is there a song that you've heard in your life? I mean, Sweeney Todd music aside, because with the new music coming out, you've got the U2 cover and the Sweeney Todd cover and everything like that. But is there a song that you've heard in your life, Andy, that you kind of went, man, I wish I would have written that song? That might be something you resonate with outside of the Bruce Springsteen music that you talked about.
There's so much. It's maybe a little close because I've been hearing them every night, but there's a band opening for us called Creeper on this tour right now. That is, I joked with the singer the other day, Will. I told him, I have a hard time believing sometimes that you didn't create this band specifically for me. Like, I'm such a fan of them that I think everyone in the whole world should listen to all of their music because I think that they're one of the absolute best bands that's out right now. So, I'm every time I listen to him come up with something because we have such similar interests, I should have written that song,
So that's it. Yeah.
Go listen to Creeper.
Go listen to
We
Creeper.
got them on tour right now. We're going to be doing more with them. They're my favorite band that's out right now.
Okay.
Very cool.
Do you have any more?
I'm good. I'm ready to just have fun and maybe get a cocktail and hang out.
I'm going to go pee. I haven't peed since we were on stage, so that's my next move.
We talked about this earlier. We were doing this last night, and we were sitting through an interview, and in my whole head, I'm like, I really got to go.
Well, it just occurred to me, my parents are here, so I went straight from stage to hanging with my parents to here, and it just occurred to me that I have not yet peed. So that's my next move.
You definitely need to take care of that business.
I told Ronnie, I'm like, we had an interview with Dan from Disturbed was out here, and then we all started talking. Yeah. And then I was like, please, dear God, let there be an opening in this conversation so I can
go run to the porta potty
quickly. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, let's let you get to that. Thank you for taking some time with us, Andy. And I wanted to mention real quick while we're getting up so you can go pee, I used to drive a Geo Metro too.
You did?
Yep, and I wrecked that bitch. It had a sewing machine engine,
But dude, don't you wish you had it now? Because it got like 75 miles
Oh, yeah. Yes. I got gas about once a year in that thing.
Yes, and it was great on snow.
Yeah, well, mine was falling apart, but yeah, I mean, the trouble with mine is that there was all kinds of transmission issues. So I would drive. Most of the band members at the time were in northern Kentucky, so I'd be driving to Independence, up and down those hills, just like. But I remember because this is like when I had it was during the big oil crisis, like 2008, whatever. People would come up to me at gas stations and be like, "Hey, how much can I get that car for?" Or whatever. I'm like, "This thing?" Anyway.
Yeah, I
Fellow
loved my
Geo
car.
Metro.
Yeah, dude, it was
I used
the
to
best.
always want to do during 2008. I always wanted because they used to have those Dodge commercials and be like, "Is that a Hemi, right?" Yeah. I always wanted to do like if I was Honda, I'd have been like, pull up in an Accord and be like, "That's a Hemi, right?" Yeah, sucks to be you.
Yeah, exactly. Because the first car I got when we had any kind of success was a muscle car, and then I was like, oh, now I get 2 feet to the gallon.
Right.
Like it's a very different experience.
Yeah, I heard you talk about that once. I go, man, if I get a chance to talk to him, I got to tell him how much I loved my little Geo Metro too.
I'm sure it's still somebody's got it. Those things go forever. I see them all the time.
Yeah,
Somebody's
it's a
driving one.
flashback.
Yeah.
Who's laughing now, bitch?
Exactly.
Well, keep following Black Veil Brides. Andy, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And
Thanks, guys.
Set on stage today was fantastic.
Thank
it
you.
was really
Appreciate it.
great.
Thanks, man.
Thank
Thank
you. You've got blood on your head. I just wanted to mention that.
I
You
do.
should get that looked at.
I'm a bleeder.